You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chillson, and this is my review for The Sun. Now, before we get into this review, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my latest videos. The Sun was screened as a special presentation for the 2022 Denver Film Festival, directed and co-written by Florian Zeller, based on a play from Florian Zeller himself. The director returns after his hit Oscar-winning debut film in The Father to give us a spiritual follow-up to that debut. The Sun is a 2022 drama that follows Peter at a hectic point in his life as he balances life with his new partner Beth and their baby son Theo and a hectic work schedule. His ex-wife Kate turns up with their troubled teenaged son Nicholas. The film stars Hugh Jackman, Laura Dern, Vanessa Kirby, and Anthony Hopkins. So, obviously, it was bringing up a lot of buzz, specifically because Anthony Hopkins won his latest Academy Award starring in Florian Zeller's debut film, The Father. However, well, I had seen a lot of talk about The Sun heading into tonight's screening, and a lot of it was quite negative, honestly, which I was nervous about. But with this cast and the premise, I still went into the film with an open mind. Oftentimes, with films like this, with this type of subject matter, I fall into the camp that connects with it and resonates with the emotions. That's what I was hoping for when it came to this film. Unfortunately, well, that just wasn't the case, and I found The Sun to be quite the disappointment. But let's go ahead and start off with what the film does well and kick it off with the positives first. Well, my biggest positives are Hugh Jackman and Laura Dern specifically. I'm gonna have to talk about the other actors, but I really hate to rag on them because of what they were handed. However, Hugh Jackman and Laura Dern, being the seasoned actors that they are more or less able to overcome the screenplay that's given to them and overcome, well, whatever the direction might have been. Jackman particularly gives a really emotional performance, and there's only one scene where it teeters over the edge for me and it gets too much and becomes over dramatic. But otherwise, I thought Jackman delivered one of his better performances, particularly in a drama such as this. For the most part, he's actually quite understated. And then when he needs to elevate that performance, I felt it was genuine and really thought he was giving the performance what it needed. Laura Dern mostly gives a much more understated, sorrowful type of performance, and it really works for her character. Hopkins is little more than a cameo here, a guest appearance, and he actually is quite good. It's nice to see him play a little bit more of a stern role because so recently he's just been grandpa. So it was nice to see him in a really unflattering light in this one, and whoo, it's unflattering. And I think the film means well. I have no doubt it will elicit emotions from the audience and hopefully start discussions from a general audience. I will say my theater was full of sniffles. I mean, the tears were coming left, right, and center. I heard it all around me in the movie theater. And several of the people around me in this film festival screening were moved by what they saw. They really enjoyed the film. And I hope that that is the case for a general audience. And anytime we can open up conversations about mental illness and start to really have honest discussion, the better. And at the very least, I hope The Sun does that. Fortunately, that's about as far as my positives go, because while I appreciate the efforts in getting that conversation started, the execution really left me frustrated with the portrayal of mental illness here. So let's go ahead and talk about the negatives with the son. Well, the big negative is Florian Zeller, unfortunately, both as a director and as a writer. It did not work here. So much of what made The Father effective in its execution really either wasn't present or was exposed here in The Son. The acting and the staging, the flow of the film all felt very stage like and in the worst possible ways. Whereas the single set in The Father worked to its advantage and it really kind of put you in the atmosphere of this man who is going through dementia and Alzheimer's. Here, well, they didn't really utilize the set in the same type of way. And instead, well, we were given really stilted direction. And the flow didn't work. I'm not sure what Florian was going for with the flow of this film, but we had hard cuts that did not blend from one scene to another. Felt jarring as we come from somebody crying to hard cut Hugh Jackman walking down the sidewalk. It felt like a whirlwind. Or we would hard cut to tumbling laundry. A lot of times it felt like we were trying to be artistic with these random shots between actual scenes that ultimately just kind of felt like a waste of my time. There is quite literally a Chekhov's smoking gun in this film that, upon any sort of reflection, once you get past the shock, it makes no sense. Like it's a nonsensical event occurs. Then we have the dialogue and the stilted direction of the actors. I would say there are maybe a handful, just a few conversations that take place in this film that feel even remotely natural or realistic. Everybody feels like they are reading a script or hitting a cue. Nobody feels like they're actually talking human beings here. And that's a huge problem when your film is so heavily predicated on emotion and emotional investment between the characters and then between us, the audience, and this family who's going through a really dramatic time. And that brings me to our two biggest acting casualties who unfortunately could not overcome stilted dialogue and poor acting direction. And McGrath plays Nicholas, basically our center focus of the film, the troubled teen who is trying to navigate this mental illness. And oh, this poor kid. I feel really bad criticizing him, but his performance is just not good, not convincing. Sometimes even falls under cringeworthy as you're watching, and he's asked to sell really heavy material, some really heavy stuff. And unfortunately, he was not supported in this. It just doesn't come across genuine. And unfortunately, that is a huge hindrance on the success of the film at large. And then we have Vanessa Kirby, who delivers probably the weakest performance I've personally seen from her. She never feels like an actual human being here. She walks in and feels heavily robotic. Oftentimes, you're not really sure where she's like delivering her lines off to. She literally enters scenes, hits a mark, says a line, and hits out to like wherever else she needs to be. And it just feels so unnatural from her. I was flabbergasted. And all of our side characters, like doctors or teachers or whoever else it is, on screen also come across as wooden and unnatural. In the end, the screenplay itself feels as though it's been written by somebody who took cliff notes of mental illness and buzzwords from Wikipedia, from WebMD, from their internet Google search, and just put it to the page without really understanding what those words meant or how those words felt. As someone who has resonated with a lot of the words that were being spoken here, who has felt the actual feelings of what the character was talking here, there was such a disconnect between those words and what was actually being depicted without any sort of understanding behind them. And that is what really left me feeling at arm's length from this film overall. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of those people sniffling because I felt almost alienated from the film because it just didn't seem to understand its subject matter. Overall, I do think The Sun was well intentioned and it has two strong performances really doing everything that they can to hold this thing up. Unfortunately, it feels pretty much out of touch and completely artificial all the way around. So I really wanted to love The Sun. I really wanted to connect with it on a deep level, but unfortunately, Florian Zeller just completely missed the mark for me when it comes to his evaluation of teenage depression. Yeah. So that is my review for The Sun. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see The Sun, or have you already seen it at a festival yourself? Let me know your thoughts either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.